right, guys, here are 3 of the most common questions that I get when it comes to Airbnb and how I run my Airbnb business. So let me first tell you a quick story about the first time I was looking for my Airbnb. So it was actually down in Tampa, Florida. I know most of you probably know where that is, but they have a little sub-region around that area, which I won't tell you exactly where it is because that's where I have my Airbnbs and it's still where I'm shopping around. But in my program, I share the full details of everything, including the neighborhoods that I look at. Besides that, I want to share a quick story. So I was looking around and I wanted to find an area that I could possibly buy a house in that people would feel safe staying at, right? I didn't want something to be super sketchy. I didn't want it to be too high-end either. So I had to find a nice sweet spot. And granted, this was the first house that I ever bought. I wanted to buy something that wasn't super expensive either. So I wanted to make sure that this investment worked and that I could pass it on to my students as well. So the very, very first Airbnb, I spent maybe like 3 or 4 days just driving around. I literally just got in my car and I started driving around. Eventually, I got to a point where I kind of understood the city for the most part, and I knew where the less expensive areas were and the more expensive areas. And so I could map out like these gray areas in between, which would allow me the proximity of a safe zone, a more expensive, safer area, and also provide me the value of maybe a not so expensive area. So that little fringe, that gray area, that allowed me to purchase the house that I bought. And so before I got there though, I had to go on a bit of a journey, and I went to one listing that I saw. So after driving around, I started looking at listings, and then I found some listings. I'm like, hey, let's go look at this house. So I went and I looked at this house, and the house was great. The photos were awesome, everything was nice, but because I was unfamiliar with the area, I didn't realize that this was actually a bad area to buy in. So when I was going down there and I was driving up to the house, I realized that, hey, this is not an area that I would want to be in, right? I probably wouldn't want to walk around here at night outside. I probably wouldn't want to invest here because I know that potentially my tenants, they could feel unsafe. And I know that that's going to affect my Airbnb rating. I know that's going to affect the rebooking rate, right? Even if I can get them to book one time, I wanted to make sure that I could get them to book again. So that journey really helped me learn the city, and it helped me learn that it's not just about the house. What's more important is the location that the house is in, because you can always buy a bad house in a good location and improve the quality of the house. But you can't buy a good house in a bad location and then improve the location. That's something that you can't change. You can always change the value of the house or the quality of the house, but you can't change the quality of the location. So make sure you guys are always looking for houses that are in good locations. To answer the first question that I get a lot in this program is, how did I get started? So I started looking around, right? Once I found that house, I was like, okay, this is not an area that I want to be in. And I wanted to move into another area, so I started looking at the other listings, and I spent 3 or 4 days just going through these listings and finding houses that I could potentially buy and then rent out on a nightly basis. So that was step 1. Once I've located the house, I found something that I could rent for more than I'm paying per month on Airbnb. So I was looking for houses that I could literally rent out on a nightly basis. Think of it in terms of like buying a bulk package of something. So if you buy, let's say 24 cans of Red Bull, right? You might pay $20, $30, $40 for a case, and then you could turn around and sell them for $3 or $4 a piece. This is exactly what grocery stores do. When I go to the grocery store and I'm buying a Red Bull, they're charging me $3 or $4 for it, but I know they didn't pay $3 or $4 for it. They probably paid close to $1, maybe $1.50 for that Red Bull because they bought it in bulk, and they probably bought several pallets of it. So they're really getting a wholesale discount. The same thing happens when you buy Airbnb. So you're buying this house, you're basically paying a monthly mortgage, and that's like a wholesale rate for the cost of that house. And then you're going and you turn around, you list it on Airbnb, you make it look nice, you stage it, you got furniture in there, everything. You got a little paddle board out back, you got a kayaks, whatever, and you're renting it out on a nightly basis. So because you bought in bulk, you didn't pay that much. But because you're renting it out on a nightly basis, you're getting a pretty good rate as far as nightly rates go. And so my listings around that area, they range from about $200 to $300, sometimes a little bit more per night. And that's definitely more than what I'm paying on a monthly basis when it comes to my mortgage and insurance and stuff like that. So I'm able to make a nice profit off of that. There's a nice margin within that deal. The second most common question that I get in my program about Airbnb is, how much money can you really make off an Airbnb? Well, here's the formula that we use. Whenever we find some sort of house, if we know that the rent is $2,000 per month, we're gonna target houses and listings that we can get 2 to 3 times the rent amount on a monthly basis. So we're talking about our gross profit here. So if we're paying $2,000 a month for this house, we want to make sure that it's likely that we can make at least $4,000 to $6,000 when we Airbnb it out. And so we typically assume about an 85% occupancy rate when it comes to these listings. And most of my Airbnb units are actually over 85% occupied because they're in strategic areas where I know a lot of people are vacationing. So I get these Airbnbs in places that I know a lot of people are going to visit, but I also buy them in areas where I know rent isn't going to be super high. So there's not a very high migration of people to that area, but there's a lot of people visiting on vacation during the summer, spring break, in the winter, right? So we want a high traffic area, but not somewhere that people necessarily want to move. They just want to visit it and then get up and leave. So that gives you a good formula for returns. So it depends on how much you're paying monthly for rent. If you're paying $2,000 a month for rent, we're targeting $4,000 to $6,000 gross. If you're paying $3,000 a month for rent, now we're targeting $6,000 to $9,000 a month in gross rent. And then of course you're gonna have to subtract the rent, but you're still ending up with a pretty nice profit as long as you're able to have your utilization and your occupancy up above 85%. If you guys found this information helpful, make sure you guys tap the link below. It's gonna be in the description. It's gonna take you to my website, and there you can download my free passive income guide. And make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe.